We are beginning the Undisrupted podcast, coming to you again live from Las Vegas. Thank you guys for joining us again today. Adam, I got to ask you a question. We've had a lot of conversations here while we're in Vegas at this event, and I keep hearing this phrase, like cancel culture, and the idea, and I guess there's some controversy around it. What are your thoughts on cancel culture? I know this is a big topic, but...
Yeah, you know what? I am a fan of cancel culture.
Really?
Yes, cancel this stuff. Because here's the thing. People don't understand canceling is all about saving.
How are you saving things by canceling them?
I mean, I look at all the subscriptions that I have. I mean, between Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, and I need to cancel some of this stuff. So, I mean, if I cancel that stuff, I can save money. That's the culture we need to build. Culture of canceling things you don't need, right?
Yeah, I don't know why that's controversial at all, but it's interesting. We do have a special guest that's going to join us right now, so I'm going to invite over Kara. She's going to talk to us a little bit about this. I'd love to get her perspective on this idea, because to me, Adam, you're right. I don't feel like that's controversial at all.
I don't see why there's drama behind this.
So, Kara, welcome to the podcast. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kara Thorstenson. I'm the Director of Libraries and Instructional Technology for Chicago Public Schools.
And your thoughts or feedback on our debate about cancel culture. Where do you land on this?
Yeah.
Well, I've got two. I guess I can talk about both cancel cultures as we're describing them on today's podcast. I would really recommend for anyone who's watching or listening to this podcast that you put your expiration date of any free trials that you're taking on your calendar for any online subscriptions, so that you don't end up forgetting that it's expiring and then
I'm doing that right now
for the rest of your career through the rest of your life. But as far as cancel culture here in our society that's being talked about in terms of canceling people who've said the wrong thing online, or maybe canceling appropriate discourse or necessary discourse about communities and about our lives in the United States, I think that there is a lot of necessity to call out people who may be bad actors or people who've said things incorrectly. I also think there's room for growth, and there should be room for forgiveness in places where people issue genuine apologies. But it's a big topic. There's a lot to cover with regard to canceling.
So we were totally wrong.
We were totally wrong. Well, I'm going to go ahead and erase the next question, because it's something to do with this thing called Squid Games, but I'm not going to bring it up. Let's go right. So how should we pivot to this, Adam?
Well, today we're at a conference in Las Vegas, by the way. And it's not as sunny as people have said it is. So I'm actually enjoying the weather here.
Yeah.
But you were talking today about equity and the role that equity plays in your capacity with technology. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit of that? Because a lot of times in technology, we hear about equity, and it's like, equity and access, but it's deeper than that. So can you kind of share?
Yeah, while we try to make learning technology, like the resources themselves, a device or internet access, accessible to all of our students, equity for us also should be embedded in the learning materials themselves. And so I've been really fortunate in my role that my team and I are part of the bigger team that is developing our district's very first pre-K through 12 comprehensive curriculum system, which we've called Skyline. But it's digital in the sense that it's housed online, but that doesn't mean that students stare at a computer screen all day long to engage in their learning. It was the easiest way for us to distribute materials and to continually update resources. So one of the promises of a digital curriculum that I think speaks to the instructional technology as a practice is that we made it modifiable and adaptable by teachers and I guess by students, but we haven't quite gone down that road yet. So if teachers want to meet the needs of the students who are sitting in front of them in their classroom, and that doesn't really match the learning materials that they've been provided, they can adapt, modify, change, add, and make sure that it's culturally relevant, that what our students are experiencing in the learning materials really rings a bell for them and gets them excited about learning, which is not something we could necessarily do with an out-of-the-box curriculum.
Right. And at CPS, you've got such a wide variety of cultures. That's just a melting pot. I mean, I can only imagine how many languages are spoken in that district. How are you gathering resources or making sure, because it sounds like an amazing resource that I don't think any school has that I know of that has that kind of adaptability to it. Where are you getting the information? Where are you grabbing these resources from to help with these kids?
So this is it's core content, and so and it's from my world of libraries and instructional technology. I also oversee and have a long history of teaching with supplemental. So Skyline is core content. it's standards aligned curriculum, and we actually worked with. We didn't develop it from scratch. That would have taken. We actually visited districts who had it. Would have taken 10 years or
nice.
more. We actually took pre-existing licensed content that we purchased, and then spent 3 years modifying it to CPS's standards within a small army of Chicago Public Schools teachers, a curriculum designer full time on our team that specifically serves a particular content area. And so we had a ton of hands on it, a ton of eyes on it, and making sure that it met the needs of not just our students in terms of their like culture, race, interests, community, but also that we were meeting the needs of our English learners and our diverse learners. And so we, in some places, we kind of just stacked on top of pre-existing great curriculum. In a lot of cases, we pulled it apart, really narrowed it down to the little core, and then built back around it in a way that was more Chicago specific and more culturally relevant for our student population, which is predominantly Black and Latinx students.
And so if you could go a little bit deeper on that, because in the session this morning, you talked about creating these mirror and window opportunities for those students, with this content that's, kind of, it's not personalized, you wouldn't say, but it provides opportunities. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So with learning materials, I mean, we talk about this a lot when it comes to texts, but this is really true for curriculum across content areas or across subjects. We want to provide students learning that can both represent like a window that they can look through and then learn about a new culture, a new time period, a new place, something that, whether this is like ancient Arthurian legend or whether it's a community that's like right down the street from them but they're just not familiar with. But then we also want to provide students through their learning materials mirrors that reflect their own experiences and their values, their community, their family, their race, their color, and we really need a mixture of both to ensure that our students are like, especially not just going to become residents of our society, but also of the city of Chicago. We want them to, and we want to honor and respect the fact that although the majority of our students are students of color, the majority of students or kids pictured in the texts that we use, the curriculum that we use, and especially in children's books, are predominantly white. And so I can't speak for all learning materials across the entire history of mankind, but I can speak to contemporary children's literature where over 70% of protagonists are white kids. And that doesn't reflect our student body or our community in Chicago. So it's really critical to us that we find, that we identify and then put directly in front of kids and teach to literature that shows themselves who they are and honors that and respects that.
And a lot of schools, I know, are dealing with the controversy. There's these small parent groups and uprisings. My former district has made the news nationally just this last week with a group of parents that are pretty much bent on, the idea of CRT or whatever they think it is, and then they just decided that somebody said we need to change a couple kids' books out, and now they're absolutely losing their mind. Talk to us, because a lot of our leaders out there that listen to this are like, they're probably facing some small parent group uprising. What are some ideas or strategies? Like, how do you communicate what you're trying to do to these parents? I mean, what part of that is in your process when you're kind of investing in this culturally rich curriculum?
Yeah, we're really fortunate that Chicago's a pretty liberal community overall. There's a big commitment to education and to public education, but that doesn't mean that is far from saying that we never have issues with questions about learning content or materials. Those come at the district fast and thick, frequently at the local level, at the site, at the individual school site, and sometimes they come all the way up the ladder. So we are really fortunate to have a school board policy that governs collection development specifically for texts, but can be interpreted to cover a variety of learning materials. So that doesn't protect us from every possible thing, but what it is sort of a bolster and a kind of a this we believe statement by our school board saying that there's a methodology by which the district selects texts for our students that's board approved. In situations where a parent, a community member, and frequently a teacher or an administrator from within a CPS school chooses to challenge a book or ask that it be removed from a school library or from a school or from the district as a whole, we have put into place a process for challenged books, which ensures that the person who's challenging it has read the text in its entirety, can speak specifically to their areas of concern or their areas of interest, and then that challenged text is brought up to a panel. And if it's a site-based, if it's intended to be pulled from a particular school, then it's made up of folks who are part of that school community with advice from our department. And if it's at the district level, there's obviously a lot more stakeholders folks from different walks across the district to evaluate the challenge and determine if it's going to impact student learning. And then are there cases where books could be pulled? In my career, not at CPS. I definitely have been in a situation where a book was challenged and we did end up removing it from the shelves. But what this allows us to do is identify explicitly the instructional need for these kinds of learning materials, as opposed to just saying that it reflects our students or it reflects a particular experience of a child, which in some cases isn't enough or isn't an argument that a community member is interested in hearing, right? So what we want to demonstrate is that this is critical to student learning. This is part of our curriculum. This is how they're meeting their learning standards. It doesn't resolve 100% of the issues, but frequently we find with those kind of barriers in place and challenging the challenger to really engage with us in conversation about the materials, that can alleviate in many cases people's interest.
That's where we're doing it wrong in Texas, because I think what they say is just you have 3 minutes at the board meeting, say your piece,
Unreal.
and then they're going to take out a book and read about how they don't like. Well, I won't get into what they say, but there's been a few that have gone viral lately. Keeping the end in mind, so to speak.
Now, hold on. I want to go a little bit deeper on that one.
Oh boy, there's so many analogies. Keep going.
But and that's something that's very important, is having a transparent process.
Yeah.
Because this is my conspiracy theorist belief. So you can listen to this. I think some of these parents are trying to become TikTok famous. I mean, that's why some of them are getting up and doing something. If you are truly, if it's truly heartfelt and you care about the students, I apologize to you if you're listening. But some of the other ones that are out there, it really looks as though they're finding like the excerpt. Like here's like you said, that one line out of context. I'm going to read this, and they haven't read the whole book. And the fact that there's already a process in place in every school system when there is a challenge.
There should be.
There should be.
If there's not,
Right.
you should be checking that right
I know
now.
in Georgia we have, like, at the state level, we have to have
State Board of Ed, yeah.
So there's already a process in place. It's not going to the school board, and reading an excerpt, but it gets people on the social medias, on the news, because they got up there and they made a stink about a book that actually no one may even be reading.
Right.
In the school, let's just be honest, But that's just my little 2 cents on that. But it just kind of irks me when some people are so excited about, oh, did you see this book? It's like, okay, The Handmaid's Tale. I'd rather watch it than read it. But you know what? Hey.
Got to cancel your Hulu subscription. But the backing up to a point you made earlier too, and you were talking, we've hit this on the show a few times. Like, equity and access, tech directors, we listen. Oh, we got devices, we got the tech to the kids. I like that you're changing the curriculum, or not changing, but you're at least allowing for some expansion of it into different realms. One thing that we've noticed, and you probably see this a lot at CPS, is that at the lower performing schools, the tendency of ed tech is to go into remediation and use it for kind of busy work, versus the higher end schools where it's creativity, entrepreneurship. How do you affect that change? Because you got such a wide range in CPS. I mean, you got a lot of low, obviously low SES areas, but how do you challenge that, or how do you help that? Specifically, the idea of creativity versus remediation.
Yeah, the conversation that we've been having lately, especially coming back from 18 months of predominantly remote and hybrid learning in Chicago, is about kind of the language around remediation and or acceleration, and then how to use learning materials to accelerate or like pull out high priority standards and emphasize them while trying to keep the students on grade level content. I'm aware, for any teachers that are listening, this is a lot easier to talk about than it is to implement in a classroom, right? I have no illusions about that. But when what we've really tried to make really clear to all of our teachers as we're implementing this Skyline curriculum is that this is not intended to be this isn't a drill, this isn't a resource where students are expected to sit on a laptop for an hour or multiple hours and have a computer determine if their math problems or whatever it might be are rising in difficulty, lowering in difficulty. I'm aware that there's lots of programs like that out there. What we want is for this curriculum is housed digitally, but isn't intended to be exclusively digital learning. And we want teachers to engage with their students, determine where the learning gaps are, give thoughtful pre-tests, and, review and modify the learning as necessary. pick out the priority standards and then just like kind of adapt, not necessarily on the fly. Hopefully they have time to plan. I know it's a lot,
Yeah.
but there's a lot going on right now in general because all the kids, we've had a lot of disruption over the last 18 months. And so I think that's really, I think looking at it that way, and today I talked a little bit too about how students need to be creators with the technology that they're using and how they need to be able to communicate with the technology that they're using. None of that lends itself to, sit and get kind of instruction on a computer or drill. And if students need to make up for lost time, which many kids do all across the U.S. right now, not just in Chicago, we're really hoping that teachers can kind of not do the impossible, but take on the challenge of cramming in those high priority standards where necessary that you're picking up from second grade or third grade, while meeting your fourth graders where they are and really getting them excited and engaged about their fourth grade learning and sort of like building in those scaffolds. Again, like that's a tall order, but I think like that so much of student engagement comes from the challenge of learning too, and not from being discouraged with the understanding that you're doing work from that you missed in second grade or that you missed in third
and
grade.
labeling them, and then you're stuck with that label, and then the kid becomes immediately discouraged and disengaged with school. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
But the technology gives us that ability to customize so much for students where I don't need to know what Carl's doing unless I'm like looking on top of his screen, but he's getting what he needs and I'm getting what I need. But it still requires that oversight from the teacher to make sure that we're hitting those milestones and on track and getting that support when we need it. So, we're not necessarily against programs, but I'm against programming kids as it relates to using technology and all these whatevers that we give these kids to get on and try to accelerate them or remediate them. That can't be the cure.
Right.
That's not going to fix anything. We're just going to spend a lot of money on programs, but at the end of the day, that's not what our kids are going to be doing in the real world.
Yeah, and it's hard to say that it's engaging for them or that they're engaged. For some students, maybe it is the way they prefer to learn, and I think that's another thing that's kind of come out of COVID-19 is that we have students, we've started a virtual academy in Chicago that is right now specifically for our students with medical health conditions that prevent them from being in a school without being vaccinated. But this is a huge promise of giving students. Remote learning was not the solution, I would probably say, for the majority of our students. Like they need in-person learning, they want hands-on. But I think like what technology offers our students now that we are slowly but surely getting back to normal is the opportunity to really meet students where they are at with instruction. If they are a child that could benefit from remote learning, maybe we continue to provide that opportunity. If they're a child that can benefit from more interaction with digital resources and less interaction with individual kids, if that's their preference and they're successful in that environment, that's something that we learned by getting thrown into the deep end could potentially be effective for our kids, and technology can help us with that as well.
Awesome. Well, we got two wrap-up questions for you. So first one is, where can people find out about you, your work, things you're doing? Where can they get access to these resources, or can we? Because it sounds like you put in a ton of work to do all this stuff that, like you said, you borrowed it from other districts. Where can we borrow from you?
Well, I'm sorry to say that Skyline is only available if you are within our domain at CPS.
So are they hiring
a lot
at
of
CPS?
people.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? We always have positions open, guys. You can, if you visit Chicago Public Schools, YouTube has a couple of different Skyline related videos that'll give you an overview. There's kind of the rah-rah video, which I loved and shared this morning. And then there's a 2.5 hour big kickoff event, which also is rah-rah, but there's a lot of like educational experts and some of our senior leadership in the district talking about the resource and its promise. If you want to learn more about my team, you can actually visit us on Twitter at CPS Libraries. I'm on Twitter at Miss TLHLMC.
I found that. I found that you're on Twitter somehow.
TLHLMC. We're at library.cps.edu. You can visit Chicago Public Schools website. There's a lot cooking there. We'd love, and then, there's a lot of resources where we talk about culturally relevant texts, culturally relevant instruction. I shared a couple books today, but there's a woman named Dr. Goldie Muhammad who I can't say enough good things about. If you want to check out her book, Cultivating Genius, and if you have the opportunity to hear her speak, I could not recommend it enough. There is... I added
it to my list.
She's really something. I mean, she has changed. I mean, my team and I get excited. We're very fortunate that she's been a partner with us in some of this work and talking about culturally relevant instruction. And so we've been able to bring her in to talk to a few different groups of stakeholders across CPS, and my team and I are like, oh, we get to see Goldie.
Goldie's
again.
back.
Yeah, so we really have learned a lot from her. I personally have learned a ton, and we also go to use resources like Project Lit talks about culturally relevant texts, especially for like Black and Latinx students. We Need Diverse Books is another platform. They're all over the place, and they're really communities online. You know, Project Lit and We Need Diverse Books are communities that you can become a part of. Those are novel specific or ELA specific, but it really talks to like a broader, like learning about that talk can help you address a broader understanding of cultural relevance in instruction and how you can personalize that kind of learning for your students.
All right, so the other question is a serious one. Yeah. Chicago deep dish pizza. Where are you going? Are you getting your ideal deep dish Chicago style pizza, or do you like it even?
I love it. It's
Where do we go? Where do we go to
I
get
would
the
call
best
it
one?
a sometimes food.
Okay,
but
yes.
You're going to be on the record now.
I live directly across the street from Lou Malnati's, and that is not an exaggeration. The bright lights of Lou Malnati's shine in my
got the Illuminati
living room
or the
window.
Luminati.
I was thinking more Seinfeld with the Kenny Rogers.
That's what everybody says. Lou Malnati's is delectable. There's other great deep dish out there, but for the convenience factor and the delicious pizza, it cannot be beat. Cannot be beat.
She's Kara, everybody. Check out all the amazing work that she's doing at CPS. Thank you for being on the podcast. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, everybody, we are better together.
And we are better
Undisrupted.
This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Amazon Web Services.